not sure if I'm the conscience of Texas or just some composite character. I know I'm not a Democrat because I do have friends, but I'm not a Republican either. For so many years, Texans disdained Republicans. The humorist O. Henry noted around the turn of the 20th century that there were only 3 laws that mattered in Texas. One of them was that it was illegal to vote the Republican ticket. I know that Texas works, and I'm proud that we're a magnet for enterprising people from around the world. But I am a little curious over why the life expectancy of Texans is suddenly in decline and why cases of cancer incidents are steadily increasing. My curiosity about the roots of these current life and death issues leads me back in time. A time when culture was up for grabs, the Great Depression of the 1930s. Texas had a governor at that time, James Allred, who believed in regulation and even wanted a sizable tax on the extraction of natural resources. The state also had a highly capable young lawyer, Ralph Yarborough, who was a specialist in Texas land law and a successful prosecutor. This seemed especially needed at a time when big oil companies were using loopholes to evade taxes and the guidelines of the state's Railroad Commission.
Ralph, I wanted to personally congratulate you for your victory against the Mid-Kansas Oil and Gas Company. I have been told that in this one sensational case, you have earned more for the public school fund of Texas than any legal action in state history. I'm curious, where did your result in this case against some of the best legal minds in the country come from?
Well, Governor Allred, I grew up in Chandler, Texas. The public school system is what gave me my chance in life. If you could tour the world with just $1, my parents couldn't have sent me to the Oklahoma state line.
That's funny because it reminds me of my boyhood. In fact, I was born by the Oklahoma line in the small town of Bowie. In any case, young man, I got my eyes on you. As far as I'm concerned, you're the best assistant attorney general the state of Texas has ever had. Your knowledge of the state land laws is fabulous. I want you to know right now, I plan to give you something bigger, and somewhere you could say I run Austin.
Well, Governor, I don't think I'm ready for an election yet. But that Mid-Kansas oil case has really opened up some opportunities around the state.
We could even start off with a judgeship, something to get your family a reason to keep you here. The state of Texas needs a young man like you, someone who can fix windmills.
Well, Governor, you and I know that if there's anybody in Texas hiding money from the general public, it's the oil men.
I'd hang my hat on that. But the funny thing about them, Ralph, is they can also be as tight as a fiddle string. Wild cattle take such insane risk that if you treat them like traditional rich people, they'll either fight like hell or start breaking the law as they did during that oil circus in the Panhandle a few years back.
Well, Governor, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to go after the oil giants. In the midst of the suppression, you are making the economy work for the average Texan.
Well, a funny thing about Allred is that when he tried to raise taxes, the legislature wouldn't budge. And then he was kind of punished for his liberal tendencies in 1942 when he ran for the Senate against another Texas governor, Pappy O'Daniel, and was clobbered. O'Daniel was a friend of the big oil men. And a funny thing about Yarborough, too, that in his early days, despite all the money he had won for Texas schools, he too was unable to win elections. His perennial opponent was Governor Allen Shivers, another friend of big oil in Texas. But I wouldn't count a tough campaigner like Yarborough out yet. And in fact, there's another liberal politician who made me Texas proud, and that is Lyndon Baines Johnson. Now, I know that Johnson's advance from the House to the Senate came at the time when he began to get some white envelopes with green surprises from oil men like Clint Murchison. Murchison was one of 3 big mid-20th century oil men in Texas, the others being H.L. Hunt and Sid Richardson. And I can't get too down on Murchison because he and his family gave us the Dallas Cowboys, and not to mention the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. but Murchison was the most visible and, shall we say, extravagant of the three. Well, back to Johnson. Johnson, like Murchison, could be corrupt, but in an odd way, LBJ was so selfish and power-hungry that I don't think Johnson was beholden to anyone. He knew a majority had to support him at some point. He had no real ideological commitments. Perhaps in some quirky way he could do what was best for Texas. Besides that, he had a super smart and conscientious wife, Lady Bird, who did much to advance the cultivation of our state flower, the bluebonnet, along our highways.
Can't sleep.
Well, Senator Johnson, it may be an indifferent night, but I think a lot of good's coming together. Lucy's gaining weight, and Linda had her first day of kindergarten. And our manager at the KTBC radio station said that our advertising roster should get us up to $100 grand. I think your wife's gonna be a millionaire.
I think he's done.
I hope you're happy.
Lady Bird, I am generally content with this situation, aside from my stomach deciding it didn't want to play nice with me this morning, so to speak.
Lyndon, I tell you again and again. Too much alcohol on an empty stomach. You don't eat right, and then you drink too much.
Oh, dear God help me, we're gonna have this conversation again. Lady Bird, I have got a revolving door, a clientele. Oh, dang. Now, it'll all be worth it, because I'm doing very good in the Senate, I should think, and I do reckon it. Now, I have just today gotten 2 new staffers. I have got the best food and travel budget of any senator right here and right now. And I have got a fully stocked bourbon cabinet for usage when those old dogs come around wanting to do some real business.
Now, Lyndon, I know you're not stealing from our radio station or the Soviet, and our finances are the same. So where is all this extra money coming from?
Now, darling, don't you worry your pretty little head about that. You worry about your duties as my wife. You worry about getting my breakfast to me in the morning, 2 sunny side up at unbroken yolk eggs with some black coffee. Oh, dear Lord, I'm salivating at the thought. And that nice morning post to start my day.
Lyndon, I mean, I could understand with the helicopters in Stinson during the election, but money is not like sand on the sea. Where does a junior senator get all this money from?
Well, if you're so concerned about the matter, dear, I have got quite a few supporters here in Texas for whom have supported me in my campaign. They have gone above and beyond, so to speak, in helping me with this campaign, and have learned to back me in that same fashion, which, quite frankly, is something I do really wish my wife would learn a thing or two from.
You could see that an ambitious first-term senator like Lyndon Johnson might be just the man to deal with the chairman of the American Energy Commission, Leland Olds. Olds, a New Englander who had received his highest degree from Union Theological Seminary in New York City, was acutely aware of how resources like oil were readily available only to a select clique of oilmen. Moreover, that clique was moving west. Olds favored federal policies that would give consumers the power to check the producers of oil. Unfortunately for Olds, Lyndon Johnson had already wined and dined several senators, including one Senator McFarland of Oklahoma, who in hearings about oil had some tough questions for the energy czar.
It is evident that Mr. Olds would restrict their returns on the basis of original cause, would strip all gas moving in the interstate commerce of any value as a commodity, and would pursue a so-called investment rate principle to its ultimate result, a vanishing ban rate. Mr. Olds, this testimony that you are about to give Senate, the chairman referred to a report of the majority and a report of the minority. This report that you're about to give represents your own views. Is this correct?
My views in support of the majority's report.
But we want to know whether what you were saying represents your own views or is a compromise of the majority.
Senator, with all due respect, I would not be putting my name on the line for a cause I did not personally support.
You have the floor, but keep it brief.
Senator, your misuse of my words is a little shameless. I am fairly certain that my cause will speak for itself. I just want to say this. If a producer finds it in his advantage to sell by utility market to utility market, and he decides to do so thereafter, I think he should be subject to regulation because it is a utility business just as much as sale by pipeline to utility market. He could choose, however, he can say, I prefer not to sell to utility market. And in that case, he can keep his gas and sell it any way he wants. But once he chooses to supply a utility market, then he assumes that responsibility, which both the federal government and the state governments have indicated require regulation in order to protect all interests concerned. It is the government's responsibility to regulate these sales, and it would be irresponsible to allow a producer to sell his wares to a utility completely unchecked. This is common sense. Both the government and the producer have roles to play. All I'm asking is that you let them play them properly. Nothing you do to try and twist my words will change that.
Well, howdy. Mind if I join you for a game?
I'll be damned if it isn't Clint Murchison. Come on! The game's just getting started. Join us.
What are we playing? What are we playing?
Some regular old card game. Don't know nondescript, you know?
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's see. You know, Mr. Leland, I represent a group of oilmen who are very interested in your work, and we look very favorably upon you and what you've been doing so far. But it's just a shame that we have to be on opposite ends of our political spectrums.
You flatter me.
Yeah. Well, I'm just hoping we can resolve our differences some sportsmanlike way.
What's this?
Well, let's just call it a white envelope with a little green surprise on the inside. And you can keep it. You can keep it, and there's more like it where it came from. All you have to do is flip the coin and make sure us oil men, us humble workers, make sure we get our vote.
I'm gonna stop you right there. I don't know what kind of man you take me for, but I don't want your damned money, and I don't want your offers. Now get out of here!
All right. Suit yourself. And see you around, you bud.
Perhaps I shouldn't be so proud of Johnson, especially when he behaved like a barnyard animal. But he did have a way with words. He once called President John Kennedy's brother Bobby that little runt. And as far as Olds was concerned, Johnson and his aides rejoiced when they found older records of a younger Leland Olds backing communist principles. Johnson provided an important cue to Senator Joseph McCarthy, whose own accusations about subversives in government came a year later. The Texas senator told journalists and fellow senators that Leland Olds was an unabashed communist.
Extra, extra, Commissioner Leland Olds caught in a communist scandal. Only 5 cents apiece. You have to pay for that.
Lyndon Johnson, Clint Murchison, and other political leaders believed they were serving Texas at the time by preserving the Texas Tidelands District for state rather than federal use. This could have provided some nice beaches, but instead it provided another rich field for oil drilling, and a new Texas multimillionaire oil man came on the scene. This was an SMU graduate from Dallas, William Clements.
Bill, I'm just not going to give you a loan, plain and simple.
Well, thanks for nothing, Clint.
Now, don't be too hasty. I got a deal for you. Did you know that yesterday, our team got Leland Olds kicked off the Federal Energy Commission? Bill, not having the government right on your back is not such a bad gift, is it?
Go on. You've got my attention now.
So, what school is your Lucy Bird attended to in D.C.?
The National Cathedral School. When I first graduated high school in Marshall, Texas, I began at a 2-year school in Dallas, St. Mary's Episcopal School for young women. After that, I became Episcopalian.
Well, is Lyndon an Episcopalian?
He's part of the Christian church, on paper at least. Lyndon attends several different churches, and well,
Well, what?
he comes with me to the Episcopal services, but he has his quirks. For example, he mentions building a memorial for God. Usually a memorial is something you build after someone has died.
Well, is he Christian?
God is merciful, and yes, I do think he is Christian.
Well, my husband, Ralph, and I, we are Methodist, and in that we agree 51% of the time. We are from the small town of Chandler, near Tyler. I thank you for meeting with me. My husband would very much love to be governor or senator, and is very unhappy with the Shivercrats.
Lyndon has his reservations for the Allen Shivers and his inane control over our state. All the oil men behind him, too. Your husband, he's fought big oil, right? In the 1930s?
Yes, he did. But I'm beginning to think that unless he opens up to the oil men, he'll never win Texas. And I mean, he's basically given his life away, and I fear he is wasting it.
Opal, your husband and Lyndon,
they're very close. Much closer than you think when it comes to civil rights and using oil money to pay for public services. If your husband would start playing with the oilmen and fighting for depletion allowances on the national level, he would begin winning.
Hello, Miss Yarborough.
Oh, Ralph, you poor boy. No one loses 3 elections.
Well, I just did. And I keep on losing again and again. That cowboy, Alan Shivers, man, he really outdid me.
Well, honey, you must remember our old East Texas saying that one can't get his lot unless he's prepared to boil the pig.
What does that mean?
Stop going against the oilmen and start using them.
Honey, these men are totally against the society that I am fighting for.
I think you need to keep a date with me and go to the Arts Museum in Dallas tomorrow. We can stay at the Hilton in the Arts District.
I suppose.
Well, it should be told that Opal's plot got Yarborough to see a recent painting purchased by the Dallas Museum of Art. It was The Oil Derricks at Night by Fort Worth artist George Grammer. Rather than portraying rusting gray networks deleting the countryside of color, Grammer adorned his derricks with coronas that glisten with life-giving light. A Delft blue horizon holds out against the black Duco night. Copper tones and goldenrod colors appear, a testament to the wealth that oil provided, not only for the oil barons, but for the thousands of roughnecks, accountants, machinists, welders, truckers, and construction workers that Yarborough hoped to represent.
Thank you. You know, Rev, I'm rather glad that our wives have something in common, as my wife's from Karnak and yours is from Tyler.
Well, Chandler, actually.
Irrelevant. Now, I do gotta let you know something. Now, Ralph, I like you. You stick up for the little guy. But I do need you to know something.
What?
That you are thoroughly a dumbass.
Now, why am I stupid if I have paved the way for equality for society?
Well, I'll explain. Now, you generally are pretty good about fighting for the little guy. But you have forgotten a very, very, very important group of little guys. Namely, our working class. More specifically, the working class working for the oil companies. Which, as harsh as it seems, are one of the bigger employers to our constituents. So, you've forgotten about those truckers, and you've forgotten about those roughnecks working for them their oil companies.
No. I oppose the Murchisons and the Richardsons.
Well, that's a mighty fine coincidence, I dare say, as I do as well. Now, can you take a wild guess as to what it is? No? Didn't figure. You see, you're bending over backwards when they're bending you to their desire, whereas I am bending them to mine.
Now, how do you do that?
Well, when you're the federal government, or any sort of government, you have to make a fair few compromises, as regrettable as it is. Now, that means you have to be able to fight for that oil extraction. You have to be fighting for their right to drill in the Texas tidelands. As lamentable and as irritating as it is.
But.
There are no buts, Ralph. The only but I want to see or hear is yours in that seat as I go and educate you on the matter. Now, I'm going to make a winner out of you whether you like it or not.
tad bit confused, Clint. See, I was under the impression you invited us to a $1,000 plate dinner, and it looks to me like there's only about 5 settings.
Well, it seems that someone has jumped the gun and bought all of them. But that we shouldn't worry about that. We have everything we need, and everything has been taken care of by a great guy. This guy, I mean, I tell you what, he has taken care of a lot of your investments in the oil fields. He has taken over the tidelands in just one fell swoop. And his name is William Clements.
Welcome, Texas Tide couple, and thank you to my dear friend Mr. Yarbrow here. It's me, William Perry Clements, the SOB of Texas. Sweet old Bill, that is. I'm Texan down to my toenails, not just because I was born and raised in Dallas and went to Highland Park High School, but because I purchased the biggest public library in this great state. Go on, ask me anything. Ask me any questions. Who was the first soldier to die in the Alamo? Do you know this I who's petitioning the James Missioner for him to write a novel about Texas? That will be his only novel over 1,000 pages. I told him anything about Texas better be larger than life. Oh, I just love Texas. Senator Johnson, I have to thank you for all that tide time you've been giving me lately. Why, we just tore down a coral reef to put down one of them big oil rigs on the coast. Why, you should have seen it. Right out there, that shabby, splendid thing in the sunset. Oh, did you know the Texas Tidelands are making waves with the surfers? Apparently, the waves from the rigs out there beat anything they have in California. Not that you could know when the rigs are coming. That is classified information. And Senator Johnson, my friend here, Clint Murchison, tells me I have the bona fides to join your White Envelope Club.
Well, that's great, Bill.
Oh, Senator Johnson, every Texan sees you as the great enabler of the state. And, well, I was wondering if you could cut back on some of these governmental welfare programs, or 2, or 3. You see, we gotta stop playing nanny to our Texans. Let them pull themselves up by their own bootstraps like I did. Why, if the government provides those boots for them, their toe boxes might fit, and they might get the wrong size. That's what I say we do for this state. The only way to solve our problems is to work head first towards them. If all those young men want to go to college, have them work their backs off. Get all those unwed women out there working, and tell all those minority communities that if they want what they want, then they better work their backs off like me.
I see this thing with interesting eyes, and you have a lot of explaining to do.
I must be a favored person being invited to your bedroom, Lyndon.
Actually, Ralph, I never know who I'll find in Lyndon's bedroom. The other day, 3 reporters were in here. Of course, this morning, the majority leader of the Senate is not feeling well. Well, let me start. Ralph and Lyndon, I believe that your support of the Texas Tribute to Policing Allowance has created a monster. Even the scent of this man repulses me. Not to mention his cigarette smoke. He is like some Frankenstein from the Texas shore, like some beast from the sea.
William Clements is a new breed, all right. The Sid Richardsons and Clint Murchisons, well, they voted Republican, but they could hedge their bets and help us out. William Clements, on the other hand, he's a problem.
Crazy as a bull bat, I should think.
It's interesting how he mixes cowboy imagery with this new form of rank conservatism, even though he favored the New Deal.
Well, I heard he was just an irresponsible teenager during the New Deal, hunting birds with his dogs around White Rock Lake, even though there was an ordinance against it.
Can't believe some Texan like him, who went to SMU and worked in the Texas oil patches, has some kind of like Texas cowboy accent, even though he was an engineer.
Sorry to interrupt this lovely conversation. I don't suppose I could persuade my lovely wife to bring me some bourbon.
It's 9 a.m. in the morning. No, you may not.
Well,
Have some soda.
Best I'm gonna get, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't worry about Clements. His conservatism, well, it's old school. He is so uncouth and unable to control his emotions. He can't even talk in any sort of winsome way. Without any major coaching, he won't be able to influence the general public and call the shots in Texas.
Say, haven't I seen you around this convention before? What's your name?
Yes, you probably have. My name's Rita Bass. Oil has been in the family. You know, my father's Mason Crocker. He was a big oil man. And so is my husband. You probably know him. His name's Richard Bass.
Oh, I know your husband from my Highland Park high school days. How's his mountain climbing hobby going?
Oh, well, that's a long trail, the story.
Say, why don't you join me? I hear you're woman into Republican Dallas politics too. I have some serious funds I could let loose for the cause.
Oh, so now you've caught me already. I take it you'd like to contribute to our Republican campaigns in North Texas?
I sure would. It'd be my patriotic duty, madam. Now, how much do you consider to be a reasonable amount?
Well, it's $1,000 to help elect John Tower as the first Republican senator of Texas.
Say no more, madam. Say no more. Let's see. Here's $3,000 for your campaign and $2,000 for whatever fees you may come across. Paid off to the Republicans or Tower or whoever.
Well, this is marvelous. Thank you.
Don't mention it. No problem at all. I met the Republican rebels a while back in Washington, D.C. Lyndon B. Johnson and Lady Bird Johnson. I don't trust them. I don't think they like me. I wish I could get into politics sometime.
Oh, but you could. The Texas Republican Party needs successful businessmen like you.
You really mean it? Would you be willing to coach me?
You bet.
My fellow Americans, this is not just a great day for our nation, but for the entire world as a whole. Today we move forward. We have not just created a new drilling company, but have redefined the entire industry. Gone are the days of disunity between nations, meager oil supply, and mediocre labor. Today we will start drilling everywhere in the world. We have rigs in America, off the coast of Mexico, Switzerland, even India and France. Today the world unites under SEDCO. I predict that within a few years, walking to places will be once a fable. Everyone will be able to drive, no matter where they are. We will never run out of crude oil supply. However, I would like to address some skeptics in the room, mainly our would-be investors who are a little leery of us and our enthusiasm of our mass drilling in the Texas tidelands. To them I say, the time has never been more ripe. We will drill everywhere. We will yield thousands and tens of thousands of crude oil barrels a day, with the unity of the nations all working in one. Why, the only thing that separates us from a modern day Tower of Babel is the fact that God himself smiles upon the nations. Today we move forward under SEDCO.
Well, good morning, everyone. Today we have a special guest interview with William Perry Clements Jr., who, as you all know, is running as the Republican nominee for Texas governor in the upcoming 1978 state election. How are you doing this fine morning, Mr. Clements?
I'm doing wonderful, Pat. I'd say all press is good press during an election.
Well, Mr. Clements, while Texas has primarily leaned to the left side of the political spectrum for about a century now, you've gained tremendous traction in the polls over the last few months against your Democratic rival, John Hill. What would you say has helped you accomplish this?
Well, Pat, I suppose serving as Secretary of Defense under President Nixon would give a pristine reputation for anyone. But what I see more in this great state is cries for reform. Everywhere I see is a need for help in the economy, jobs, budgeting, education, even the oil industry. And believe me, Pat, I know a thing or two about oil. No, but my biggest problem with this state is seeing the Democratic candidates and all the Democrats' formula in general coming crashing down on their heads every time. Whenever a problem comes up, they take the costly way out. They just want to spin their way out of the problem instead of facing it head on with hard work. And where does that end us? Right up where we started. It's like nothing more than beating a dead horse.
Critics say that you take too many risks where both the environment and the economy is concerned. They claim that you view the state too much like a businessman and not a seasoned politician. They even claim that conservatives are going to cut funding to programs that help our public. How would you respond to these claims?
I wholeheartedly believe that my critics are incorrect. 30 years ago, I united not just this nation, but the world itself under SEDCO. And I believe wholeheartedly that in order for success to happen, there needs to be unity. And a unified economy is a strong one indeed. So keeping my promises to the people is going to be my number one focus this election. Unlike what my rivals say, I wholeheartedly believe that what they claim about me is false, Pat.
Well said, Mr. Clements. Folks, this is gearing up to be quite the interesting election. I'm not a betting woman, but if I had to wager my money, I'd put it on our friend Bill right here. We'll be right back after these messages.
My darling, both God and luck are on our sides. The minority communities may just be what I need to pull ahead in the polls.
You certainly pressed the right buttons today during your interview. The oil men and the rural voters sing your praises. I just can't believe you'll be the first Republican governor since Reconstruction if you win.
When I win. It's even more amazing watching the Democrats' tried and true formula come down on their heads. No longer will they be able to spin their way out of whatever bumps or potholes they come across on their road of problems. People are tired, dear. They want something new, something fresh, something big, someone else to follow, and someone else to blame.
I feel like that's all I hear in the news nowadays. People don't want to solve the problems that are already there. They simply want to put the blame on whatever official who's already in charge.
Democrats only have themselves to blame if they don't vote for me. In truth, the oil men and the liberals need each other. Everything the Democrats want, whether it be better education, infrastructure, or welfare programs, can all be done with oil drilling in the economy. Drill everywhere, I say. Even a little drilling will do wonders for this economy.
The oil men were right to side with you. I just can't believe it took this long for Texas to wake up from their daydream. Maybe we can finally solve some problems around here instead of creating them.
And that, my dear, is what is going to allow us to emerge victorious.
Come in. Big news, sir.
They seem to be giving me a lot of that since I became governor. More complaints from the left, I suppose.
No, sir. The Ixtoc 1 just blew out. The reserves are draining into the Gulf as we speak.
What? How could this have happened?
We currently don't know, sir. The press suspects safety oversight.
The Ixtoc 1 is in the Gulf of Mexico, not Texas. Does the spill pose any threat to the Texas shorelines as is?
Not currently, sir, but we should be prepared nonetheless.
That buys us some time. What are the investors saying?
They're as alarmed as we are, sir, but don't you think shore protection should be our priority?
I've seen many oil spills within my lifetime. If Pemex gets their act together and the authorities work with them, they can stomp out the flames before they spread. I was elected on behalf of the oilmen and the businessmen who invested into my campaign, and I intend to keep their promises to them. Their unity ensures everyone else's. Let's let Mexico clean up their messes before we start.
Are you sure that's wise, sir?
If I second guess myself, I wouldn't be elected, would I? Call the backers.
Yes, sir.
Oh dear, don't feel so blue about the spill. As you said, it's just like spilled milk. Milk does make a mess, but it can be cleaned up.
My darling, I have begun to worry that my public image has begun to sag.
Well, that will never happen, Bill. You were the first Republican since Reconstruction to sit in the governor's mansion. And you were the one who started drilling in the tidelands before we knew for sure that Texas would have it. And I think people should admire you for taking that risk. You exemplify capitalism and stewardship of the land so that all Texans can prosper, so that we can have giant interstates and great oil distilleries and be the energy capital of the world.
That may be, but the environmental issues that my political rivals predicted long ago have just begun to emerge.
Johnson and Yarborough thought they were great, but in place of their interests in regulated economies, you gave us the freedom that we fought for in 1836 against Santa Anna. You are the truest Texan of all time, Bill. You represent how Texans have coped throughout history. They had a situation, they made the best of it. If they needed wheat in a plow up West Texas, they did it. And if they needed billions of barrels of oil to whip the Nazis, they did it. You are a true hero, now and forever, Bill.
Thank you, darling. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Rita and Clements clicked to a degree that helped change the political direction of our state. Despite his anger management issues, Clements was the man for her after being humiliated in her own first marriage to mountaineer Richard Bass. The marriage of Rita and Bill Clements lasted until his death in 2011. When Rita met Clements, her husband Richard was living apart at his snow resort in Utah, partying each weekend with lovely women from around the world. Rita ricocheted from her shame to become a fanatic on behalf of her new husband Bill and the state's First Lady. If truth be told, her campaigning in West Texas probably put Clements over the top, as he won the governor's election in 1978 over Democrat John Hill by a razor-sharp margin of 50 to 49%, thus initiating Republican dominance in the state that has continued to the present day. As for Lyndon Johnson and Ralph Yarborough, we had with them some of the last of the state's liberals who might have re-envisioned the state's petroculture. Johnson did sign the first of many Clean Air Acts as president, and Yarborough helped preserve natural areas Texans today revere, such as the Big Thicket, South Padre Island, and Big Bend National Park. Still, the liberals in the main were bought off by the oil companies, and in the end labored to make room for William Clements and the Republican Party, a man and party they disliked. As for the spilt milk, well, we are still living with that today. During the time when Clements was a two-term governor, the state built 10 new power plants, and these coal-burning facilities and others like them have helped bring toxicity to every corner of the state, including trace amounts of lead and mercury. The Texas car culture, which seems to permit a vehicle for every adult, may also be becoming a menace in our big cities. Here, TRAP, traffic-related air pollution gases, are, according to experts, shaving about a year off the lifespans of those who are daily dependent on the larger highways. So this is our past. What are we to do with our future? As a proud Texan, I realize I may be a little too proud of all the money we have been able to spend and the things we have been able to afford. Like Johnson and Yarborough, I too have made my peace with Big Oil and cheered the philanthropy and dynamism it has brought to our state. As for the future generation, I have one story to tell. Back during an age when horse-drawn wagons dominated our roads, pedestrians had to look twice, not just for horses, but for the carryover of privies, cesspools, chamber pots, trash, and slaughterhouse waste that were carelessly dumped into streets. These conditions did not improve for some time. Unimaginably vile streets accompanied some 60 years of our history. The churning umber ooze of these thoroughfares attracted flies by the millions, and other insects that served as vectors for over 100 pathogens, including Shigella, Campylobacter, Salmonella, enterohemorrhagic E. coli, Bacillus anthracis, and Vibrio cholerae. We solved that problem, ironically, with the use of automobiles. But now I reckon it will be incumbent on a new generation to find yet another solution. It isn't getting any better. In fact, our acceptance of petroculture is part of an even larger toleration for contamination. Currently, Texas has over 50 Superfund sites, with wastes that are obviously hazardous to human health. Many of these sites lie on the boundaries of poor urban neighborhoods where tens of thousands of people are exposed to toxic materials on a daily basis. Then there are over 200 landfills which are not getting any better or smaller, contaminating groundwater and leaking sizable amounts of methane into the air. Given these issues, even I must reflect that pride, yes, even Texas pride, will come before the fall. Somehow, I need to prepare myself for a reset. I need to become more conscious of the ways I might be breaking my own law not to mess with Texas. I don't want to have lived only to destroy. But I am confident that we can find some way to rethink habits that have become injurious. We cleaned our streets. Though a recent study attests that I still wouldn't want to live by it, the water of the Houston Ship Channel has gotten better. To some extent, wind and solar power have diverted the problem of acid rain. We have learned to compost and tolerate unleaded gasoline as well as reusable bags and bottles. Both our former governor, Pappy O'Daniel, and that persevering Texas troubadour, Willie Nelson, used to sing the song Beautiful Texas. Our own state anthem tells of a place so wonderful, so great. I believe that with God's help we will succeed. Can we not pass along to future generations a Texas that will continue to be wonderful, beautiful, and great?